Oh, and where should we start here? Because there's a million different stories, and celebrating Mayo's victory in the All-Ireland, I think, is good for all of us. You know, as we said on the show, was it Enda McGinley who said that this is the biggest public health risk that there is at the moment? You were tweeting at halftime, geez, they better calm down here. We're going straight to level 5.
Yeah, like 4+ is already looking precarious. Tony Houlihan walked back into government buildings as soon as he saw the score coming from Tuam Stadium yesterday. A public health risk developing. This was quite unbelievable, wasn't it? Like, I think that we had clung to this notion that form from pre-pandemic would just continue straight over, and I think a lot of us had Mayo down as big outsiders. Like, I'm not sure if you go along with that, Kieran, that this completely blindsided you, this result yesterday, because even with the players that Galway were missing, some of the frailties that they showed are not the frailties you tend to get away with anywhere near Division 1.
Yeah, I think Mayo, like, really, when you look at them, when you look at how consistent they've been at times in the league over the last number of years, you look at how good their forwards are at tackling. When you put that together with the experience they have, and plus the fact that they've finally succumbed to having a bit more patience with Aidan O'Shea and leaving him in there and not putting in ball to him, but mixing every ball up. They hand passed a lot of ball to him in the D where he caused wreck. He won 6 or 7 frees. Normally he's winning them frees on out the pitch. You know, he's 50 or 60 yards. He always gets fouled in the middle of the field. He gets around somebody and the first thing they do is foul them. It's no really advantage to Mayo. It slows the game down for Mayo. It allows defenders to get back. Whereas yesterday you saw him whenever he got it close to goal, and he's so strong and athletic that when he puts the head down and goes inside you, you know, you've 2 options. If you're 1-on-1, you're probably going to end up fouling him, and he got fouled for quite a lot of easy scores yesterday. He was a threat and over the top, which kept defenders back, which gave them a bit more space to bomb on from the middle of the field. You saw the way Oisin Mullen and Paddy Durkin were bombing up the pitch. So, yeah, like, you know, look, I don't want to judge it too much. I think it's very positive for Mayo, but I don't think it's as negative as it's probably been made out to be for Galway. I know Joycey said it was the most disappointing day of his career. He'd feel like that on the sideline looking out at it. But I think when he goes home and looks at it in the cold hard today, and I'd say they could be training hard for the ultimate prize. But when you look at it from a Galway point of view, they were missing 9 or 10. It didn't start well for them. When you have a lot of fellas that aren't that cohesive with each other, and you're firing them into that situation, and there's a team dominating, it's very hard to find some way to bring it around when you're missing so many of your first team players that would maybe know how to settle it down or would have the experience to go down with an injury, start a row, something to settle the game, where that never really happened. Mayo just came out and played like the way they wanted to, and looked extremely good at time by the way they mixed up their game. But obviously the big note of call is how they played Aidan O'Shea yesterday.
Yeah, just on that, like, why has Aidan O'Shea at full forward not been done more in the past? Like, I mean, it has been done, and he tends to get pulled out a lot. Is this a matter of perseverance now, where if things aren't going well, keep him there and be patient, because it will eventually come good?
Yeah, I think it's probably been a lack of patience and on both parties, probably from Aidan and his management teams over the last number of years. Because look, he played there a few years ago. I remember a quarter final when you're in Croke Park, he got 3-4 or something. He just looked devastating inside there, or it might have been a game in Hyde Park actually. And you were kind of looking at him, kind of going, "Geez, they have to play this guy in here. Like, he's dangerous, he's powerful, he's smart, he's got the quick hands from the basketball." But what often happened was if they ever played him in their own, it's a tough position to play, especially in the modern game now, where bodies are back everywhere, and you can get a bit of. He likes to be on the ball. He likes to be dictating terms. But you know, I said last year on this show that, you know, that at full forward, he just offers you more, in my eyes, in winning a game. Whereas in the middle of the field, correct. He'll compete. He's good on the tropes, which I still think he can do both tropes. I think they can have set plays from the tropes and try and win both throw-ins, because he's so good at the throw-ins as well. So I think you have to look at where he's strong, but then get him inside, because, as I said, look, the earlier point I made, he won 5 or 6 frees yesterday. They're all ended up, there was 6 points. Normally when he's getting fouled out the middle of the field, they're getting nothing for it. It's actually harming their game, because he does take it into contact out there. He does get fouled a lot out there, and fellas stand in front of him, and it just allows their team to funnel back. So I think with him inside, I think Oisin Mullen put in a lovely ball. Mark Moore put in a lovely ball on the outside of the boot. We saw the one that he went for that he missed, which is in all the papers this morning, that leap. But if he'd have caught that and landed and stuck it in the back of the net, you know, we'd be absolutely raving about it this morning. But it is a big call. I think the time he can play out in the middle of the field, he can play out there anytime. But I think when he's probably best is if he starts inside, leads the line, has patience, even if the first 15 minutes don't go great, to have patience, to stay in there and to stick it out and to make good decisions for your team. And I think if Mayo get leads in the championship come the wet months of November and possibly into December, you can definitely then bring him out with maybe 20, 25 minutes to go if you're comfortable where you are. But I think that's the best way to use him in my eyes. And I think it keeps the defense. You have to be very honest when you're defending him because he does have that threat over the top. And I thought the way he linked up with Cillian O'Connor was something that Mayo should be really looking now to hone in on. It was when I went in there first for Kerry in 2006. You know, Jack really honed in on it. He really demanded guys to get their heads up to play the ball and not high ball every time because I'd Gooch and Mike Frank either side of me, and he had Cillian O'Connor and Conroy next to me yesterday who were brilliant as well. So it's getting your head up, looking up. If it's a one-on-one inside, you play it into the big man. The boys will know it. They'll come off him on the loop. He's good in the air. He's obviously good basketball IQ and skill set with his hands as well. So I just thought he was an all-around handful. And like Sean Andy O'Kelly is probably the best physically to match him in the country, size-wise and power-wise. And he was just nowhere near it yesterday to the point where he was just frustrated fouling late on in the game because he was just found it so hard to handle him.
I guess it helps when you come to the argument of not pulling Aidan O'Shea out that you have a guy in Mark Moran who looks like he might be able to hang on to a half-forward jersey. When you have someone like Cohen and Ruan in midfield, it's really up to those to those three positions, your 8, your 9 and your 11, to be consistent and good to ensure that Aidan O'Shea doesn't have to come out. It's not so much about O'Shea's failings in a full forward himself.
Yeah, no, it isn't, but there is a belief, I would say, in that team over the last number of years that if it's not going right, we'll just bring Aidan out if he does play inside or if he does play. And I think centre forward is a mould where they kind of found where they get a bit of both out of him. But I think if they're going to try and win in All-Ireland and they're going to try and go for something that they've been so close to over the last number of years, you know, it's going to be a strange All-Ireland. It's going to be over in 4 or 5 games. And I just think you need to just go with it and live and die with it because the other way hasn't worked over the years for them. You know, it hasn't. They've always come up short. And I think when I saw him chipping the points yesterday, like, you know, he's just such an inspirational player for the team that when he starts knocking over a few points, they're nearly worth 2 at times, especially in a big championship game. Now, that would be in effect more if there was 40 or 50,000 mad, passionate Mayo fans in the stadium because he does bring that out of him. And that was a big reason why I was asking for him more at full forward at stages last year was because I wanted everything I saw yesterday, but when he kicks his 2 or 3 points on top of it like he did yesterday, I think the Mayo fans would rise in their seats and he could actually carry them with him over the line. And if I always felt if they were to win in All-Ireland, I always felt he had to do that. That's the road he had to go. He was going to be always very solid in the middle of the field. He was going to give him a great platform. He'd go toe-to-toe with Fenton and all these fellas. But eventually, late on, with Dublin's running, you know, you could see him. He just ended up for the last 15 minutes in a lot of these games, kind of chasing runners coming through the middle. And I think it allowed Dublin and other teams to do that because there was no real fear factor of anybody winning a ball inside and just beating their man. Cillian O'Connor is a point kicker. He's not going to get it and take you on in along an end line or down the middle to try and score a goal. He kind of pops them over the bar. But I think the two of them on that axis yesterday with Conroy, who was absolutely fantastic and looked so skillful in everything he did, it just gives great hope for me. As you said, they have loads of options. I think, you know, you look at the O'Connor brothers. They're gonna do what they do. Diarmid, I think, could possibly be the perfect fit next to Ruan in the middle of the field. Maybe it allows a Durkin to go up to 10. Because I think he's so dynamic going forward. Maybe it allows Keegan to go from 4 out to, I think, where he's best is the most natural position as a halfback. I know he was in kind of lockdown mode yesterday, and he can do that. But I just think for Mayo to be on song, bombing out with pace out of the halfback line, good kickers, and getting your head up and getting the ball into the danger man as quickly as possible could be a good way for them to go this year.
it definitely seemed at times yesterday that Mayo were getting their scores, if nothing else, in very easy positions. It definitely felt the way for Mark Moore, and phenomenal performance, don't get me wrong, but he clocks up 1-1 in acres of space to get his confidence up early on. Are you giving the credit to Mayo for this? Are you blaming Galway for this? Because this is like right down the spine of their defence, it seemed that Mayo were picking them off.
Yeah, no, look, as I said, I honestly, it's not a game or a result or a time, I don't think, to be overly dissecting. Of course, Galway will be worried, but what happens with a team when they're worried is all of a sudden, anything that would have been a bit not right, or anything that they were doing that was kind of a small bit off over the last few weeks, they'll be really honed in. They'll really dial in on each other now, and they'll start demanding more of each other, because the fear factor will be there that we can't let this happen in the championship again. So I just don't want to go too much into it. Yesterday. Mayo started really well. Everything was going for them. They were playing great football, and Galway were a team that looked like the loss of Shane Walsh, the loss of Comer. They were just they'll need that, and they'll need that back. And look, Comer's probably a doubt now, depending on how bad that hamstring is, and he's really where you were kind of talking them up as a possible All-Ireland finalist, maybe somebody that could cause an upset down the line. I think without the likes of a Comer, Ian Burke is class, and Walsh will be class next to him. So they could go down the route of playing the two lads inside, along with Conroy, who was really good, who was the only kind of leading light for that Galway unit up front yesterday, and maybe go with the three of them inside and pack out the defence and try and play that counter-attacking. But they were just a bit off it yesterday. They didn't need to go chasing the game. Mayo are a hard team to chase against. Owen. They're a very experienced bunch. Even the debutants that would have played yesterday would have watched the way that this Mayo team has conducted themselves over the last few years, and they'd know how to play the right way. And I think Galway were finding it really hard to reel them in. And when you start chasing a game, when you have to like that, you start leaving yourself exposed, and then you get a scoreline where the other team just run up a bit of a cricket score on you. So I really don't think I'm going to look too much into it. I think the Galway Mayo Championship class will still be a very close game. Just I think Comer, if he is gone, and he is gone for the year, it takes a real kind of ace out of the pack for them. Similar to Tyrone, you throw McShane in with Tyrone and Comer in with Galway, and they're different units. You take the two of them out, and you just that edge that could win you in All Ireland, I think, is possibly gone.
Okay. Let's have that big macro chat then, because I think if you're Mayo, you're unbelievably excited about what you've seen, because you were concerned that last year you were a fair bit off, and that some of the young players coming through might not be of the required standard. They've obviously been working away, growing their own games individually until they were allowed to train together in the last couple of weeks, and all of a sudden the young lads do look like they're on the pitch on merit, alongside some household names from that Mayo team that we've really loved over the last decade. I would be very, very excited if I was from Mayo's perspective, notwithstanding the fact that the game was very easy for them yesterday.
No, you 100%, Ger. You'd have to be. If you're a Mayo person, and I suppose the narrative about out there over the last kind of year or two is maybe the fact that they haven't got it over the line. There's a lot of their players going past 30 now. Is this the end of the road for this Mayo group? And yesterday tells me it isn't, because the likes like Oisin Mullen, the way he drove onto the game yesterday from cornerback, looks like he'd just be an absolute nightmare to be on, because if a fella's going to go with that kind of freedom and have the ball playing ability and look like Higgins at times in his early days when he was kind of weaving through weaving through that Galway defence yesterday, very smart on the ball. Took one bad kick, which I looked at and kind of said, okay, he's going to hear about that in the video meeting during the week, and that'll probably end the silly decision making when you do all the good work to get the ball up to the field. Like, his job should be up there, should be, okay, can I run in here and hit an Aidan O'Shea or a Kieran O'Connor in the D, screen their man and allow them come on the loop and kick a point. But look, you're right. The youth and the energy, Loftus in the middle of the field, even though I think he could probably end up wing forward maybe on this team. But, I think if you look at the young guys that they played yesterday, that will give both the Mayo fans hope. But I think it will breed a huge amount of confidence in the Mayo group, because you also, you've the likes of McLaughlin, Parsons, O'Shea, guys to come back into the team, Keith Higgins. You've got great experience to come in. And you've got
be the cavalry from the bench, which is kind of what Dublin would do. They wouldn't just play, they'd start the young lads and bring the cavalry off the bench.
100%, and that cavalry coming off the bench is fully loaded with experience. They're starved for success. They want that All-Ireland. So those guys coming on, one, that they're still very good footballers, but two, that they're not going to make any bad decisions late on down the stretch of the game. So it's hugely positive for Mayo. You have to just put it like that. But at the same time, I don't want to go over the top with it, because I think I know the position that Galway team were in yesterday. They were hit by COVID hard. They have a lot of injuries. They lose a few fellas in the warm-up. This whole game, even listening to James Horan after the game, the warm-up is different. How they get there is different. Everything is a bit different. So you throw all that into the mix. You get off to a horrible start. You're chasing. You don't have too many leaders to go look for to bail you out of it. Then you're picking up injuries in the warm-up. Then you're picking up injuries early on in the game. Johnny Dewan going off, and you're just a small bit all over the place, and you're playing against a team who has contested a number of All-Ireland finals in the last number of years. Everything is going swanny for them, and you get this huge kind of cricket score effect where Joycey obviously has come out and said that he was embarrassed by it, and I think that was probably a little message from him as well to galvanise his group going forward, as well as it being the truth that he would have been hugely embarrassed by the performance yesterday. But I think when he looks at it the cold night today, he'll see how many he was missing. He'll see how badly the game went for them in the start, and not give them an out on it, but just really be demanding of them in the next few weeks to make sure that they're rightly up for this contest if it rears its head further down the line in the championship.
It's interesting that you're not willing to go over the top on that, and I think there is enough mitigating factors on Galway on that. I definitely kind of rushed into, I guess, really go over the top over the course of the weekend, to be quite honest with you. And let's just talk a little bit about Dublin on Saturday night, for example, where they didn't look perfect, far from it. They started so well, and at that point, it looked like they were going to kick on and hammer Meath, to be quite honest with you. It didn't quite materialise, and Dublin looked quite sloppy. And I just wonder, we're 6 weeks away from leading into All-Ireland semi-final weekend. This is no ordinary league campaign. You don't have months and months to get this thing right. I wonder if there is an entitlement to actually read a lot into the sloppiness or whatever it may be for these sorts of teams. Now, the Dubs have such a great setup that they'll probably be able to arrest anything that might be going wrong, or they'll be able to bring in a load of better players over the next couple of weeks. But what do you think about that actually championship is close, that there isn't a whole pile of time to get things right?
Yeah, it no doubt, Owen, it is very close. But you have to give these players have been off playing with their clubs on for the last 4 or 5 months. They've had a limited time together, probably 4 or 5 weeks at this stage for some counties. When you're gone from a group for 7 months, and you've a new management coming in, you have to allow for the period of where, as you call, sloppiness can also be equal to rustiness. So you have to you have to get the gauge in that right. Let's be realistic here. These guys have not played much together. They might have been able to have a few trial games, training games, but nothing like a team would normally be set up 5 or 6 weeks out from championship, or 3 or 4 weeks out from championship. They'd be after spending a constant part of 5 or 6 months together. They'd be fluid with each other, So look, yeah, Dublin weren't at their best. You got to give Meath a bit of credit. Meath have been unlucky in this league. They've performed well, but they just haven't probably been able to see games out and see the games over the line, which is why their position is where it is. But it wasn't like they were hammered in every game. They put it up to everybody. They gave Kerry a serious game here back in February inside in Killarney, or above a Meath. But look, for Dublin, they'll be disappointed a bit with yesterday. I saw Kevin McStay talk about maybe their discipline at times last night, their reaction to getting fouls called with them starting rows, as a negative, whereas I looked at it as an extremely positive thing. Dublin still care an awful lot. 1, 2, they weren't willing to lie down, that they were still playing right in the edge, that they still have the hunger. That's all good things to see in my eyes from a team that's just won 5 in a row. If I came out and John Small wasn't really at it and wasn't in his man's face, and Johnny Cooper was letting fellas go down the middle. There was a few iffy tackles by guys yesterday. You know, if you look at them like, and that was being allowed and people weren't reacting to it, I'd be nearly more worried as a Dublin fan. The fact that they were on each other yesterday, the fact that they'll know when they look back in the video wasn't good enough. No, they'll be coming again. I wouldn't be overly worried about them all. I think it's really, you know, I think they'll get their house in order and look, obviously they'll still be the ones to beat. But yeah, look, there was sloppiness at times yesterday, but you know, and this isn't me, you know, I'm looking at it from what I wanted to see out of certain teams yesterday, and what I saw out of Dublin wasn't the best fluidity wise or movement wise, but they still had that edge, they still had the desire. They were still getting cross with each other. They were still getting cross with the opposition. All stuff that leads you to believe that they aren't sleepwalking into this championship. They'll still have their Leinster run. They'll get a good few games and maybe a fright or two inside in that, and they'll be ready for an All-Ireland semi-final when the time comes.
I actually think that's the most important thing in all this. That actually, if I'm Mayo, I'm unbelievably excited because you're going to have to hit the ground running at some point in Connacht. You're going to come up against somebody before an All-Ireland semi-final. There isn't a series of gimmies for Dublin. That challenge that they had against Meath was essentially as bad as it's going to get for them in Leinster, which means that over the next 4 or 5 weeks, they can prepare themselves almost exclusively, not entirely, but almost exclusively for an All-Ireland semi-final and try and peak for that week and for the All-Ireland final if they're going to make it that far. Where everybody else, and with Kerry having to face this Cork team, like we've kind of been joking about like Kerry not having any challenge.
It's no joke, Ger. It's no joke.
All of a sudden,
you know, it's no joke.
All of a sudden, Cork look like they're in good form. They've picked up exactly where they left off. Okay, the standard that they're up against is much lower than the standard that Kerry are up against. But can Cork give Kerry a game? Here I am asking two Kerry men. I'm stupid. I mean, it's the stupidest question I've ever asked in my life. You're both going to be, oh, yeah, of course. Jesus, it's a 50-50 on any given day. But come on, honestly, what level of fear do Kerry have at the moment, or concern or worry about Cork?
Oh, zero fear, Ger. Zero fear. There's not a hope Cork are going to beat Kerry inside in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. No, in all seriousness, Cork are mixing that blend of experience with a shot of under 20s. An injection of them guys came in last year. They're building nicely. They've got a good management team under Ronan McCarthy. Cian O'Neill is doing a lot of work on their physical condition. They looked really, really strong yesterday. Look, we're judging them on playing Division 3 teams, and the point was made last night that it's a serious step up in gap. But for Cork and Kerry, you have to realise a lot of these fellas have played college ball together. They know each other. They'll possibly have been on the same teams with fellas in college. They'll have a good understanding of this Kerry group. They've obviously had all the underage battles all the way up. But it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to not building Cork up. It's going to be a tight game. I expect Kerry to have too much for them up front in the end. I think Cork have the half back line was really good yesterday. They kind of bombed on O'Donovan, Matty Taylor and Kiley. Looked really good at bombing on. They had Ian Maguire in the middle of the field, who's a very good runner, and they'll look to get Kerry where Kerry have seen to have perceived problems over the last number of years, which is people running at them down the middle. And there's no better team in the land when they get on their pomp than Cork at running down the middle and going straight at you. The question is, will they have enough guile and experience to get over that Kerry group when the time comes? But this is the fascinating thing that we're looking forward to. It's the winter football. It's a bad decision here or there by a ref. It's a close game that anything can go, and it's whoever gets a break of a ball. So, that risk of being out also kind of when fellas aren't overly used to in the Munster Championship could bring a bit of an edge to Cork for them to even open their eyes up more to the fact that they've got a really good chance of taking a scalp in Kerry and going after. But then Kerry will be saying, we're the All-Ireland finalists. We're ready to go. We're trying to get back there and trying to win that crown this year, and they'll probably want to put Cork in their box a small bit and kind of tell them that they are still a good bit off them. But I don't think the gap is that far at all.
If you look through all the Division 1 teams over the course of the weekend, you could make a case that Kerry experimented the least. Certainly when it comes to their defence, Peter Keane has tried a blanket defence before. He went for it again. Everybody dropping back when Monaghan were in possession of the ball on Saturday. Is this something, in your opinion, that they're going to stick with over the next little while? Because it definitely seems, personnel-wise, he had his first choice defence available to him for the first time in a long time, really, because of Peter Crowley's injury last year.
Yeah, it's good to have Peter back. You know, he is a good anchor there to have at 6. Paul Murphy as well at 5. He's so solid, he's so smart, he'll do all the stuff with the right team. But yeah, it looks like he's got this kind of Jason Foley, Tadhg Morley and Tom O'Sullivan, and the boys had a really good year last year, and they're kind of learning and they're developing, and from the game the weekend, they did hunt in packs a bit better. They were going after the ball. I was a small bit, you know, disappointed at stages last year where I felt that it was a bit just mano, and you look after your patch and I look after mine, and I just felt that at times, but certainly in the Monaghan game, you know, they were ball hunting a bit more. They were going after things a bit more. It looked like they almost played with a kind of a, you know, at stages when they were getting Monaghan to go back and over the pitch, it was like they nearly had a Christmas tree effect. They were defending out in a kind of triangle and pushing people down the sidelines, which obviously if a ball's coming down the sideline and you're a corner back, it's a bit easier for you to defend. You know where to put your man, you know what angle to be, you can play a bit in front. He's only got a certain amount of areas you can go if you've got a sweeper back there. But they've got a lot of very smart guys. Dave Moore in the middle of the field. Diarmuid O'Connor was very athletic yesterday, got around the place, was able to tackle, was good in his feet. He played a bit of basketball when he was younger too. So, you know, I was a bit happier what I saw at times yesterday from the way they defend, or Saturday from the way they defended. But it was, you know, it was the scoring up front is where they'll want to be troubling this Cork team, and the defence is one part of it, and that's the bit obviously as Kerry fans, me and you, Owen, want to see them tighter always, because you know you want that defence to almost put fear into people, and I think it's you have to get to that point where you put fear into that position by how aggressive you are in your defending, how quickly you bomb up the pitch. They're all things that strike fear in opposition forward lines, and I think that's what they should continue to strive to improve.
You coached Tony Brosnan and David Clifford together for Tralee. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
How does Peter Keane get the best out of the two of them if the two of them are going to be starters for the next little while? Together, I mean. Obviously, we know how to get the best out of David Clifford.
Yeah, no, they're two absolutely highly skilled individuals, and they're very driven guys. You know, Tony, in fairness to him, you know, there was a game last year where the Crokes had a game a few days later, and it was a Wednesday night, and you know, we didn't want to play him, and it was late on. He wanted to come on, he wanted to play, and you know, I just kind of looked at him and kind of said, this guy really wants to be out there and really wants to prove his worth, and we didn't give him a run that day. But you know, in fairness, he probably punished me by scoring 2-10 against us in the county championship game a few weeks ago. So he's a highly skilled, very accurate, very tricky, and with any bit of a decent supply line and playing alongside David Clifford, who's going to take so much minding. He's a perfect little sniper of a corner forward, and you know, he poses great problems to the Kerry management going forward, because he is a good option. If you throw in the likes of Gainey and Tommy Walsh and these other fellas, Killian Spillane that they have for the full forward line, he's just a bit of an ace in the card. He's slightly different. He's smaller. He's quicker than most that we have. And you know that old adage with the tricky corner forward, they're always hard to watch. And this fella will put it into the eye of the needle. He's a good passer. He's a good kicker. He makes good decisions, and he's a good teammate. And himself and David Clifford were brilliant around me last year, and I'm sure brilliant around the group for the lads. And that's good it's good that they've got the competition. It's good that the likes of Tommy Walsh and Gainey and Killian Spillane know that this kid is coming. It's great for us, because we thought he was out with this punctured lung. I thought he was, you know, the talk was he was out for the season. So I'm delighted for him, because he would have had a tough time. He missed the county final after being scintillating in all the earlier rounds, and he'd be a huge loss if he was out for Kerry. But no, it's good to have him, and I'm glad Peter gave him a gallop in next to David the last day, and it worked reasonably well.
He did have a couple of really good goal chances, and one of them, if he had side-footed it, probably would have given Rory Beggan something to do. It's something that you had to work on late in your career. did a couple of one-on-one sessions with Colin Cooper. Is that something that Brosnan should be looking to do? His own club mate, perhaps out kicking ball, out doing a bit of goal work, because if he can turn those opportunities into green flags, he can go to another level.
Yeah, and I think he can on. I don't think he needs, I think he's probably been watching Gooch do it, to be honest, for 10 or 15 years. So he knows, he knows how to put him away. Trust me, he can roof them and he can place them. So I wouldn't overly look too much into that. I think he'll be fine when it comes to it, and I think he could be a very useful player for Kerry this year. Whether they start with him and go with him, or whether they bring him on with 15 minutes to be that kind of pop a rocket for them that could do a bit of anything, and he can score long range points. He's extremely elusive. He's gameplay intelligence, as you well know, and from watching the Croak so much down the years, they're so smart. He'll play the right pass every time. He'll do the right thing for the team every time, and he'll stick those chances when he gets them. Maybe a bit anxious yesterday, possibly to lay down a marker for the team, but I wouldn't overly be worried about Tony Brosnan putting in the back of the net. He's well capable and almost designed to do so. So I think if he gets those chances again down the road, there'll be green flags going up all right.
Kieran, I've got to get your three standout players of the weekend. We've talked about Aidan O'Shea. Is he one of them? Yes.
He is. He's one of them, no doubt about it. If Mayo are to win something, they have to do something different. That's been my point over the last number of years. What they were doing just wasn't getting them over the line, and I felt this was the move that would put most pressure on teams playing against Mayo if they were trying to win in All Ireland. And it's about them sticking with it. So Dean Rock was my number 2. 1-8 again the weekend. All-time Dublin scorer. Started really only around 15. Starting championship games. So crazy numbers by him. 17 goals, 450 points is remarkable in the amount of time he's been playing. He's still only 30, and to be honest, the way he plays and how smart he is, there's loads more years in him. So I'd say that's a record that'll probably go unbeaten.
Was it just me, or did he look actually like he's slimmed down a bit as well? Almost like he's looking to add a little bit of extra mobility or something, or pace, or I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. He did look leaner to me too, and I met him this year with a video that we did for Sky Sports on his kicking and his free taking and some of the kicks that he took over the years, and what was his pre-game routine and what was his thought process with the hand versus the thing. But I was amazed. He's big as well, Ger. Like he's 6'2", he's 6'3". He wasn't that far off me. I was kind of like going, Dublin don't put too much up for grabs, but he would be. His size is massive. So yeah, it's remarkable what he's done. And then obviously the centre forward for Mayo yesterday, Mark, I just felt the way he ran the game. He was both-footed. He could play little passes on his right or left. He looked really secure on the ball. His decision-making was really good. And I think Mayo probably had the most guys that really kind of, put their hands up. If you throw the likes of Oisin Mullen and them guys in there, I just felt, I think James would be the happiest of the managers with his guys that were relatively unproven. I think he would be the happiest guy getting up this morning, having his coffee, thinking about next week, and the performance that his younger guys gave him yesterday, as well as being so pleased with what the older guys delivered. So he's definitely the manager that's enjoying himself most this morning.
Yeah, but there's just the right amount of shaper about Mark Moore, and the way that he carried the football and was kicking it with the outside of the foot, and then the camera pans to the crowd and it's like, oh, are they saying that he's the natural successor to the guy who's coaching him to do this? And no pressure here, but and as ever, Mayo legends seem not to age; they seem to get younger. It's like that guy looks like he could still be playing. By the way, the two last things I wanted to ask you about. One is Conor McKenna. There's a clip doing the rounds of Michael Murphy bouncing off him. I've never seen it before. I've never seen it. He kind of falls backwards. What happened? It's like, wow.
Yeah. I think Michael say his footing gave way, Ger, but McKenna met him, and McKenna's another guy yesterday from when I watch a good bit of Aussie rules, and maybe it's the game, maybe they're all so beefed up over there, but I just looked at him yesterday when he was in the warm up and early on in the game, and I thought he was blowing early on in the game, so probably that first game back, probably pent up energy, bit of nervousness about playing with Tyrone. He just looked a bit leggy earlier on, but as the game went on, he certainly grew into it. He'll prove a huge option for Tyrone. he's bigger and stronger than I thought. Now, obviously, he's strong. He's been out as he rules for 6 years. They've obviously put a lot of muscle on him, but just his body shape, I just thought he was a leaner guy, but he just looked like a horse late when he went in for that goal yesterday. It looked like he'd be hard to stop. So, exciting for Tyrone to have him back. If you throw in McShane when he gets back in there, Tyrone will still think that they've hope down the road, and it's good for the game to get these guys back. Be nice to get Mark O'Connor back from Geelong too. Maybe. But he's best of luck to him in his final. And just a little Johnny Curran too, Ger, just to mention him, very tough for the Tyrone GA community when we're talking about they've got one guy back. They lost a great man yesterday, so condolences to him and his family and all involved with Tyrone GA. Very, very tough situation there for all his past teammates. It's the second guy along with Kieran O'Connor this year as well. So look, it's really. 2020 has been tough for that, but Tyrone fans will be happy with what they saw with McKenna yesterday, and I'm going to give Mikey Murphy the bailout that his back leg slipped, Ger.
That's fair enough. I can't wait to see them do it for real in a couple of weeks' time and see what happens when that's going to happen. The last thing is, right, everybody in every match afterwards was asked what they thought should happen, and everybody's divided between, look, we've got it this far to a point where we can realistically have these games, and as of yet there doesn't seem to be any evidence that there are outbreaks as a result of matches being played, and the inter-county setups have been so rigorous in managing everything that it seems like it's relatively safe to do so. It does seem like there's going to be an exemption. That's where we stand at the moment. It's 8:46, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what the government announcements are. But if there is an exemption given for elite sport and the inter-county season is given the go-ahead, should the teams and the GAA at this point try their best to get this season away?
Yes, I think they do. There's not much of it coming from players to players. All the cases that we saw were probably from scenes of people winning these county finals and losing the run of themselves with alcohol on board. I think the GAA could look at maybe getting guys from the counties to maybe, we're here on Skype. Zoom was a big thing during the lockdown, Ger, and rather than 7 or 8 guys or 10 guys meeting up in a house to watch games when they start coming, like you think of a Tyrone and Donegal game or a Kerry and Cork game down the line, and you're ringing a few fellas to come over for the game, and the house-to-house transmissions is where it's at. So I think the GAA could maybe look at coming together with a few of the players, get a few videos out there, tell people to set up Zoom parties if they want to chat about the game when it's live. But just not to be going around to each other's houses. I think we should try and get this GAA played, because it is like, look, we're all sports people. I was looking forward to watching the games Saturday and Sunday, and I think there's a lot of people out there that was probably the highlight of their week so far. So I think we should try our best to keep it going. I think we should continue to talk about COVID. I think we should continue to talk about sanitizing your hands, about wearing your mask, all these things. I think the GAA should look at maybe some marketing thing with the players to try and get the players to plead with people that if there's a Connacht final or an All-Ireland semi-final, that we can't have scenes out in the streets of local towns and villages around Ireland, that we can't have, that if the players are preaching to their supporters, listen, if we win a game and you go out and you celebrate and you start spreading COVID around the place, you're actually diminishing our chances of going on and doing something, because it's, you want to try and get them to kind of dial in on pleading with people to stay away from any chance of being major spreaders of this awful disease, and try and get people to kind of dial in on the fact of actually the players are putting massive pressure and onus on themselves, Ger, I would say, in these groups, because you don't want to be the guy that brings it in. So I'd say the players are constantly washing and sanitizing and masks on and being careful, because they have to be. They don't want to be that guy that brings it in.
Yeah.
So I think counties, and I think people, and I think if the main guys and they're hugely role models, and we always look to them to be role models, and we're asking them to put a bit of risk here and play these games so that people have this outlet and people have the bit of joy of a weekend when the dark nights come in, that we can look forward to football the weekend. But I think we do need to dial up and ratchet up the demands of us as a nation on how we're looking after ourselves, what's expected of ourselves, and trying to get through to maybe the younger people to to hold tough for a while and to not be seeing the scenes that we've seen lately, where people are all over the place and kind of in big groups and hugging and all that. And it's all drink on board. So the pubs are closed. The off licenses are the ones that are a major. They're going to stay open unless that's changed, but they're going to stay open. But it's about how responsible people are collectively about having house parties, watching games, having big groups over to watch games, all that kind of stuff. If we can try and cut that out, I think the players are being extremely responsible and trying to stay as safe as possible so that they can play the game that they love, play the game that they've worked their careers off. You've guys coming near the end of their career that definitely don't want games called off. So I think it's doable, and I think we should try and push on as best we can with it.